Hello everybody, and welcome back to another series of our agency CEO interviews. And today gives me great pleasure to introduce somebody that I've been speaking to for some time now and watching from the sidelines their growth story, and that's Alex Jeater here, from who's co-founder and CEO of a full-service social agency called Favola. But best to hear it from the horse's mouth, so to speak. So why don't you do an intro, Alex?
Hi Simon, thank you, and really pleased to be on the podcast today. We're a social media agency called Favola. So it's an Italian name. It basically means fable in Italian, and essentially it's as you say, a full service social media agency. We look after everything that covers social media, right from organic content creation through to advertising, through to video, animation, graphic design, training, strategy, but just social. We don't cover anything outside of social media, basically.
Yeah, perfect. And roughly, just to give people a sense of size, because obviously this is all about small, fast-growing agency owners talking about the realities, right? So just give us a bit of a view, a perspective on how many people you are and kind of growth rate, and obviously what you can share around margins and stuff, revenue.
Yeah, of course. So we are at the current head count, I think it's 17. The latest round should take us up to 20 of full-time employees, which is great. We've grown, so I'll give you a bit of a backstory. Like the agency is owned by myself and my wife Sophia. So Sophia founded the agency kind of 7 or 8 years ago, mainly as a freelancer, and then we kind of scaled up in the last 4 to 5 years. But over the last 3.5 years, we've grown from obviously just being Sophia and myself to that number, to 17. So it should be 20 coming up soon in terms of growth. We've just closed our latest financial year. So our revenue last year grew about 25%, but prior to that, it's been growing at 50%. But it got to the point where we're kind of, that kind of growth slowed a bit down from 50% to 25%. But I appreciate that's still quite quick.
Yeah, no, it absolutely is. And sometimes you need that respite, don't you, quite frankly, because there is a saying, isn't there, that every time you double revenues, you have to reinvent 50% of your processes, and that does slow you down for a while. So
For
completely.
sure.
So
Doesn't feel like slowing down, I have to say.
no, it never does it? No,
Yeah,
no. It's a great feeling, but also a terrifying one at the same time.
for sure. Yeah.
So I guess, like you've been on quite a journey, particularly over the last couple of years, and it's starting to get serious now at sort of 20 plus people. What's keeping you awake at night right now?
Funnily enough, I think, I mean, I've gone from, it's weird. I'll answer a part one of that story. About a year ago or 2 years ago, like, client servicing used to keep me awake a lot. It doesn't so much, and I thought about this the other day. It doesn't so much anymore. We've been quite lucky, because we have grown. We've got we were perhaps a bit reliant on 2 or 3 bigger clients, and we've kind of spread our revenue much more evenly across clients now, which is great for an agency. So the revenue side doesn't keep me up as much at all really at night anymore. I think the key things that do probably are, I'm always on, if that makes sense. Not the weekends, not on holiday, but I'm always thinking about how we can do better, essentially.
Mhm.
Like, and mainly how we can do better for our clients. Like, are we fully utilizing the best practices in social media a minute? It's so fast paced in terms of the growth and development. We had an event this week talking about TikTok, for example, and that's just absolutely exploded. And trying to keep on top of that and be front of the line and front of the queue and bringing best practice to our clients at all times, that really does properly keep me awake. There's always some sort of like client service issue that we haven't handled particularly well, we're trying to improve upon. It's always keeping us awake, secondly. And finally, I think stuff looking to the future kind of keeps me awake a bit. Like, what are we going to do next? How are we going to grow? How are we meeting new clients? Like, are there new clients that we should be meeting, that we should be winning, that kind of stuff? But I think they're probably the three things, not so much revenue anymore, because I think we've kind of gone past that, if that makes sense. But it's just how we grow quicker and how we keep at the forefront, and it's just so fast paced, and so trying to keep up with that fast pace really does keep us awake.
Because it's an interesting point. I'm sure a lot of people listening will be really interested in this as well, because you're right. A lot of agencies kind of exist really and should exist because they are able to move faster and do things more cutting edge than in-house, right? And social is perhaps, to your point, the fastest growing kind of channel, from a kind of change perspective. So how do you keep on top of that? Because, that's a lot of reinvention of end product, isn't it?
Yeah, it really is. I think internally we have a big focus upon, I mean, I take just a one element of that growth, and it's a very, that kind of almost, it's not a particularly strategic thing, a very tactical thing that we're doing is internally saying, I'm just going to talk about one thing about TikTok, for example. Internally, we have regular weekly trends catch ups, which are a massive thing on TikTok. We have, and that happens once a week in terms of a trends meeting. And as part of that trends meeting, we're also every single week discussing new developments in terms of the platforms and what they're doing and how we can be at the forefront of those changes on the platforms. That happens every single week. In addition to that, there's WhatsApp groups. There's a new opening client WhatsApp group talking about trends and trends that you should be utilizing. Um, uh, so when we have different people assigned to those to keep a track on it, because it's so fast paced that we have to be able to do that. That's very tactical in terms of how we keep on track of it. In terms of what we deliver to the clients, a bit more different. We kind of have to digest that and then push out to the client what we think is the most relevant stuff, and that's a whole other ball game. But tactically, it's just having people assigned to keep on top of what's happening all the time.
Yeah, great, great. And I mean, so it's always nice, I think, as well, isn't it, when you get to this point, because you rarely look back. It, if you were to able to offer yourself advice, at the beginning, as you now, and knowing what you know and having the lived experience that you have, what would be the one kind of biggest tip and piece of advice that you would give yourself as a founder?
I think I probably, in hindsight, it's a really hard one because we might not have grown as quick as we did, but in hindsight, I probably would have let go of some things that I was getting involved with quicker. I'm much better at that now. I'm gonna, and everyone, our team will probably watch this, will laugh, but we published, I think in 2 years ago, we worked out we published on like 27,000 pieces of content, right, on behalf of clients. I probably proofread 2/3 of that.
Yeah, wow.
Right, which is crazy. And I don't do that anymore. I do for some specific clients. Still just get involved a little bit here and there, but I kind of let that go. But in hindsight, I think I should have done that probably a little bit earlier in the journey, and people will laugh. Um, but equally, we were really focused on quality at the start, and what we still are. We're very, very focused on quality. We have minimal kind of issues in terms of those posts that go out and the content that goes out. So perhaps also by installing that culture in terms of like the copy, the captions, the sense checking that all the assets work, etc., is very, very important to us. And so hopefully I've installed that Sophia and I've installed that in the agency as being a key component, but potentially I probably could have got rid of that a bit earlier, if that makes sense.
Yeah, the delegation thing is very interesting, isn't it? Because I think, naturally as a founder, you start off having to do everything and you end up, the journey becomes you're doing nothing other than, kind of governance, really.
Yeah.
And yeah, it's a very difficult thing to learn to let go. And because ultimately that perhaps at the beginning at least, it's not going to go quite as well as if you'd have done it. And that's a difficult thing to process.
Yeah. Yeah. And also know what I've kind of slowly learned, and no one wants, you have to give people freedom and they have to be able to kind of learn along the way. And so I was probably perhaps, because it was so important to us, that we probably held on to that element of it a bit too long. But yeah, but in hindsight, but then equally we may not have grown as quickly if we didn't really focus on quality at the start. So but yeah. But unfortunately I don't do that anymore, which is great.
Good. So I guess like turning it round then, actually, while we're on the subject of kind of looking back and giving advice through experience, what advice would you give or not just your clients, but clients of agencies? I think this is always an interesting way of looking at it, because the client agency relationship is a really interesting kind of one, and sometimes it's perhaps imbalanced, and I don't think that particularly helps. Some brands' view of agency is that you're the kind of the lower level kind of delivery mechanism for them and their whims, which doesn't always work well. So if you were to give advice to clients about how best to get the most out of their agency, what would you say?
Yeah, it's funny this, because I was actually discussing this, and we had an event earlier this week, and there was a big TikTok creator speaking there, and we asked them the same question about what's the best thing to do as a briefing, and they were talking about how giving guidance, but kind of letting us then, and I agree with this, letting us then come up with the best solution because we're the experts in terms of the platforms, is the best thing. We always run everything we do past clients before it gets posted anyway, so it's absolutely fine. but giving overall guidance, but then letting the platform experts get on with it. Fortunately, I have to say all of our clients are really, really good at that. Like, and that's why they employ a social media agency, right? These are the guidance. This is the briefing for the month, or this is the briefing for the campaign. We need you to deliver that. We'll then play back. There's always a round of feedback, and that's fine. And the clients we've got are really good at that, and they understand that's the benefit of having it. But I don't think getting involved in like swapping out of words and getting down to the kind of really finer details of something is probably kind of a hindrance to growth and progress on social media. It's so fast paced also now that we have to post so frequently and get so much content out there quickly, that any kind of delay and stalling of that process is an issue, because you'll miss basically what's happening.
Yeah, and it's a very, the sign off thing is very interesting. I'm sure a lot of agency people listening to this, watching this, will be nodding their heads. Like, do you have, how do you manage that? Because sometimes people take a long time. Do you have SLAs in place? How do you make sure that stuff is signed off, quickly enough?
Yeah, look, we're quite different in terms of our pricing and how we kind of propose this to clients. We're very focused on output, so there's different kind of options that you can choose for, but typically most platforms we say we'll commit to this minimum posting schedule. We always probably do a bit more than that. We keep really agile for it, so we don't cost per hour on that, because it just doesn't work, because sometimes you'll just burn through loads and loads of time on one post. If it's really important to the client, we just want to make sure we get it out. I think the key thing with feedback though, which we've learned, is too much feedback means that we're probably not, there's little point in having an agency. You might as well just do it in-house. Not in, and no feedback is equally as bad for us, because we want the client to be involved. So it always scares me, those two things. It's a happy medium between the two. If there's no feedback on something, we're a bit like, yeah, but we want you to be involved. We want you to understand it, and we want you to kind of be engaged with it, because that's really important. Otherwise, again, we're not sure. We want to make sure we're hitting all the messages that you want. We want to make sure it's aligned with the brand and everything else. So yeah, it's a fine balance between the two of them. And I'd say, fortunately, a minute with our clients, the current clients really get that, which is great. And we had that happy medium basically.
Yeah, you've obviously got the right client mix, and you know what good looks like, which is helpful, isn't it?
Sure.
So the other, and obviously the other side of this is then making sure, which helps with the kind of the round of amends, is just having good people in house. And everybody knows in digital how difficult it's been to find those kind of people over the last, well, few years really, but particularly a couple of years. So, do you have any kind of advice on hiring and how to find good people, or the right shaped people for you?
Yeah, for sure. Look, I mean, obviously, as a social media agency, a lot of our social media content on Instagram and TikTok, I'd say predominantly the channel and the focus of that is a lot of the time is prospective employees. Occasionally we win some new business from our Instagram channel and our TikTok channel, but if you actually look at the channel, it's all about our agency work life, for example, on TikTok, and what it's like to work at Favola. And on Instagram, there's that mix, but also a mix of these are the best practices on social media. This is fun content that's going out, all of that kind of stuff, which a lot of other people in the industry will view and look at, not necessarily new clients. So I think, well, for us, it's worked really, really strongly to talk about our team culture and the Favola culture on social media, and it really, really helped.
Yeah, so work really hard on your employer brands, basically.
100%. I don't think we get it right all the time, to be honest, but you have to be humble, and it has to be a joke. There's a lot of, on TikTok, there's a lot, the team film funny like TikToks of me taking the piss out of me, etc., which is fine. It's part of the culture, right? And it kind of shows the openness and the nice culture we have at Favola, for sure. I would say that a big tip I have, I talk with employees about this as well, is that for junior roles, LinkedIn ads are really strong now, and the majority of, almost 95% of our junior roles, so junior social media exec, senior social media exec, come from LinkedIn.
That's good too.
Which is great, and it's cheap.
Yeah. It is for using it for that. It's very cheap, isn't it? Yeah. Okay. That's really helpful. I mean, I guess, you've obviously been working very hard. You've done, I'm sure you've, fallen down many a hole on the way to kind of where you got to. But I'm really interested as well in like how far you want to take this, like, because, the answer to that is very subjective, isn't it? Some people want to, are very happy with a 3-person agency that, like affords them a nice lifestyle. But, obviously you've gone a bit further. So I'm really intrigued as to, what you see success looking like and what the end game is for you.
Yeah, it's funny you asked that. At the start, when Sophia and I started it, we were really kind of focused on just like surviving and how it's going to work. But we're well out of that now, and I think success will look like really for us over the next 2 years, probably doubling the size of where we're up to at the moment.
Yeah.
Would be really fantastic. We're kind of on course to do that, which is great. But yeah, I think double the size of where we're at the moment is our kind of overall objective over the next maybe 2.5 years.
Yeah, perfect. And obviously you can't talk about revenue, and so you tell me to to go somewhere else. But like, so just to give people a sense, you're obviously in you're obviously in the 7 figures from a top line perspective. Given the number of people that you're at, and when you're operating well, what sort of margin do you see as being a success?
Yeah, for example, so I've just said we just closed this year, so I'll talk to you a bit about that. So as I say, gross up about 25%, which is great. Our salaries, what the previous years it was growing 50%, and actually that meant that our obviously the margin had grown quite considerably in that time. It's come down in the last year to about 30% in terms of the bottom line. So which I think is in line with kind of what the industry is. Prior to before, what we basically took in the past year was scale up the team for more sustainable growth, because I think we were doing really well, but we were working. I personally was working all hours. The team were working really, really long hours as well, and full credit to them for doing that. But it was clear that wasn't sustainable. So now we've got a much better structure. Our salaries has obviously increased quite significantly in the last year.
Yeah. So you're investing ahead of growth, aren't you? But which is an investment in the business.
Sure.
I talk quite a lot to agency owners that, kind of parade, 40+%, margins. And, that's great if you're running a lifestyle business, but at some point you have to invest in growth.
Yeah, for sure. When you look at it and it's not sustainable. But I suppose a lot of agents go through that, right? We're growing so quickly that we're trying to keep up in terms of recruitment. But the last year we've got ahead of that to a certain extent. And so the team aren't over capacity basically, which is a good thing. So we're now scaling up for more sustainable growth for sure.
Yeah, great. Well, are you up for a few quick fire questions to kind of round this up?
I'll give it my best for sure.
Yeah, you don't know what's coming. So I guess first question is like, and this is always an interesting one to start with. What do you feel, and I'd be interested in both the answer from an agency perspective, but also you perspective. Like, what are you the best in the world at?
From an agency or personally?
But I'd say it'd be interesting to hear both, actually.
Wow. Okay. Agency wise, we are really, really fast on jumping on the latest trends and what's happening in the industry and the latest platform trends. So really, really quick. And I'd argue we're very, very ahead of the game when it comes to that. And because it is a social media, we know social media inside out. So yeah, for sure. Trends, getting content live, really fast paced environment. So yeah, I'd say we're best in the world at that, supposedly. Personally, oh God. I think I'm probably oh God.
This would be interesting when you're taking it back at
when everyone's watching it back. I like to look. My role before, I worked at a big market research company called Nielsen, looking after teams in the UK for Unilever, and then in Vietnam as well, and then did my MBA in Barcelona. Look, I really enjoy speaking to clients. Client service is really, really enjoyable. Sophia and I have a really strong passion for client service as well. We get on really well with our client service to the point where clients, when we have our children were born, they were sending us gifts and that kind of thing. Like it works 2 ways, right? Because we really, really strongly involved in our clients, and we kind of view them, a lot of them, as friends. So I'd like to say not just myself, but Sophia and I, what we have a really, really passion for is providing a great service for our clients, and that's probably something I'd like to think we were world beaters at, hopefully.
Yeah, no, and I think that's a very good answer, actually. I think it's a very good tip for those watching, really, that I think people often overlook that, particularly when you get past a certain size, because there's complexity elsewhere. Whereas, I think, I used to be a journalist, and a publisher once told me many moons ago that as long as you stay really close to your audience, the rest of it takes care of itself. And I think it's a really
Yeah.
good conversation.
Yeah, I'd like to think. I think we can always do better, right? I don't that really, but yeah, yeah. I also really enjoy spending time with them and hearing about their. I love solving their problems as well. So when they have challenges with us, I love jumping on and be able to help them out. It's just something we like to do. So it's good.
Perfect. And so final one, because I'm
Yeah.
kind of aware that we're moving on time wise. What would you say are the top, two or three attributes? If you're thinking of founding an agency or going from freelancer to founder, what are the attributes do you think that you need?
Oh, good question. Look, a lot of what we do is because your agency life's funny, right? Because you need to understand what the client wants, but also you need to understand what your team wants. And sometimes you're caught in the middle between those two things. So you really do need really good, strong emotional intelligence and awareness to understand when people talk to you, is that really what they were meaning and really what the issue is? And I think we've got a good sense of like foreseeing potential issues or problems down the line. And there's always things going on, right? But I think emotional intelligence is so important at the moment, and we talk about mental health and other things like
Yeah.
team members telling you they're fine when they aren't. You need to be able to have that emotional intelligence to understand that. Second one is probably just resilience. Like as you know, right, it's a huge roller coaster. One day can be amazing, the next minute it's like, oh God, why are we doing this? um, but yeah, that definitely that emotional resilience. Sorry, that resilience is really important. I think the final one is just just it's not really a skill so much, but just trying to think. We've got a big focus for and I at the minute on bigger picture. So think big, dream bigger. All of that kind of stuff around not just being caught up in the day to day, needing to look elsewhere, and also have those bigger dreams to kind of build. Otherwise, you're just going to get so focused and caught up in the day to day stuff. I think that's really important to get your mind out of that as much as you can.
Yeah, no, that's perfect. And a lovely way to end. So, no, look, thank you, Alex, for taking some
Welcome.
to us today. And hopefully, some of the great kind of lived experience that you've shared is going to be really helpful to those watching. So we will enjoy watching you double in size over the next couple of years. You're sitting on camera now.
Thank you. I should have said sleep as well. Sleep's really important, which I'm struggling with at the moment, but it's fine.
Yes, indeed. Yeah. Brilliant. Well, look, thank you very much, Alex, once again.
Thanks, Simon.
Thanks. Bye.